You are the emperor, the ruler of the Byzantine world, a man spoken of in legends. But now, as the final pages of your life are turned not by a chronicler, but by illness itself, neither your army, nor your gold, nor your faith can help you. Here, in the stuffy half light of your palace bedchamber, imperial flesh surrenders not to enemies, but to fever and weakness. Your end will be neither swift nor heroic, but pitiful, drawn out, and shockingly human. You lived your life for power, but you will die as thousands before you did. Slowly, helplessly, under the watch of indifferent physicians and fussy courtiers. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. Now, settle in and get ready. We're about to begin. You are in the 13th century, and if you are reading this, it means you have the privilege or misfortune of existing in a world that only pretends to understand the difference between medicine and magic. Forget everything you know about antibiotics, vaccines, or the concept of sterilization. In your world, a deep cough is not just the end of the season, it is potentially the end of you. Life here is an endless procession of maladies, each one more mysterious and horrifying than the last, and death lurks in every shadow, always eager to claim another soul for the underworld. You, dear reader, are not just anyone. You have the dubious honor of existing in the Byzantine Empire, a realm of grandeur, gold, and garlic breath. This is a land where emperors rule from the spires of Constantinople, and peasants scrape at the earth, praying for rain and for mercy from their local tax collector, both equally unpredictable forces of nature. The air you breathe is thick with incense, filth, and the promise of disease. Every corner of every street hides some lurking contagion. Children grow up on a diet of thin porridge and wild rumors about distant crusaders or nearby plagues. You can try to wash your hands, but water itself is a luxury, and soap, when it exists, smells faintly of goat and regret. Your neighbors die often, and usually without warning. One moment, they are complaining about the price of onions. The next, they are being carried through the city on a board, wrapped in a shroud, their faces covered, lest their death infect the living. If you are lucky enough to survive infancy, your reward is a long, slow war with parasites, infections, and aches that will never quite go away. Disease in your time is a force of nature. No one really understands it. The learned men say that illness is caused by imbalances of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Your own mother, if you ever had one, probably blamed a sudden chill, a bad wind, or perhaps the evil eye. Physicians will insist on bleeding you, leeching you, or making you drink concoctions that taste suspiciously like mud and vinegar. If you are very, very rich, or, let us be honest, if you are the emperor himself, your chances are only marginally better. The palace might be grand, but the rats are still bold, and the diseases show no respect for purple robes. In fact, sometimes the higher your station, the greater the target you present to fate. As for you, well, you are not just a participant in this bleak parade. You are about to become its main spectacle. Your name is Michael, and you will discover soon enough that even emperors die in the most humiliatingly ordinary ways. You have outlasted countless enemies on the battlefield, survived conspiracies and betrayals, but your ultimate adversary, the one waiting quietly, biding its time in your own body, does not care for your titles. Welcome to the 13th century, where every cough could be your last, and every minor ache a prelude to the great, drawn out drama of medieval death. You will not die swiftly or heroically. No, your exit will be long, inconvenient, and witnessed by a crowd of physicians, priests, and nervous courtiers, all secretly calculating what your death might mean for their future. It will be tedious, it will be drawn out, and for the most part, it will be absurd. But above all, it will be real, because there is nothing quite so authentic as a medieval death, long before anesthesia, Netflix, or even the comfort of an indoor toilet. So breathe deep, if you dare. The journey is just beginning, and your demise will be chronicled in agonizing detail for the benefit of future generations who, perhaps, will thank their lucky stars that they were not born in your shoes. Or, more accurately, your very expensive, very uncomfortable imperial boots. You are Michael, and your name echoes through the marbled corridors of power like a half remembered prayer, sometimes as a blessing, more often as a warning. You are Michael Palaiologos, Emperor of the Romans, first of your name in this dynasty, the man who snatched Constantinople from the hands of the Latin invaders, restored the Byzantine Empire to a fraction of its former glory, and then spent every waking moment wondering which of your so called friends would poison your wine. People call you the restorer, but you know better. Restoration is only romantic in stories. In reality, it is like trying to fix a crumbling wall with a handful of stale bread. The empire you rule is a battered patchwork of half ruined cities, restive provinces, and endless intrigue. Every day is a parade of crises, and every night is a festival of insomnia. You sleep poorly, if at all. Your bed is uncomfortable, despite its gilded frame and silk sheets, because you are always listening for whispers behind the curtain, for the clatter of a dagger falling on the marble, for the sound of your own heart stuttering in your chest. You know better than to trust anyone, and you know even better than to trust your own body. Your body is not what it was. Once you were strong, if not exactly athletic, then at least energetic, burning with the sort of nervous ambition that makes a man believe he can outwit fate. Now, as you enter the winter of your life, your joints ache, your hands shake, your stomach rebels against the blandest meal. You are not old, not by the standards of emperors, but the weight of the crown has aged you more than any calendar. Of course, you do not have the luxury of acknowledging your decline. That is for other men. You must pretend to be immortal. You must wear the heavy robes and smile at the tedious ceremonies, endure the suffocating incense and the sycophantic flattery. Your courtiers bow and scrape and watch you out of the corners of their eyes, taking mental notes of every wince, every cough, every pause in your speech. The truth is, you have always lived with pain. It began as a dull ache in your side, something you could ignore when there was a war to fight or a council to overawe. But over the years, it has grown persistent, intrusive, like a scribe who refuses to stop reading bad news. You tell yourself it is nothing, just the price of command, but you know that is a lie. There is a darkness in you, a slow rot that no physician has managed to diagnose, let alone cure. Speaking of physicians, your personal staff is an ever changing parade of anxious men with impressive beards and even more impressive opinions. They argue over the state of your humors, prescribe incompatible remedies, and spend as much time arguing with each other as treating you. One day, you are told to eat only boiled lentils. The next, you are forbidden lentils, but encouraged to drink a wine that tastes of old boots. Every new face brings a new theory, an excess of black bile, a deficiency of phlegm, a demonic presence in your spleen. You endure their attentions because you must. An emperor cannot be seen to fall ill, not really. Illness is a sign of weakness, and weakness is the one thing your enemies never forgive. Besides, what would you do without your illnesses? They are your only constant companions, more loyal than most of your generals, more familiar than any of your children. You wake with them, dine with them, go to bed with them. They are, in their way, the truest evidence that you are still alive. And Yepotian, despite all your achievements, all your suffering, you are aware of the bitterest irony. You have spent your life defending a crumbling empire, and yet you cannot defend yourself from the enemy within your own body. You have rebuilt walls, signed treaties, forged alliances, and all for what? So that, in the end, you might die in your bed, watched over by a coven of bickering physicians and a court eager for your last breath. You sometimes imagine what the chroniclers will write about you. Michael, the emperor who saved Byzantium, who outmaneuvered popes and princes, felled not by blade or poison, but by an ailment as common as it is invisible. They will try to dress it up in grand language, but the truth will seep through the cracks. You will die as you lived, surrounded by doubt, afflicted by uncertainty, and, most humiliating of all, utterly, inevitably mortal, but not just yet. The pageantry continues. The city still calls for your judgment. You have councils to preside over, ambassadors to threaten, and children to disappoint. The empire staggers on, and so do you, limping from crisis to crisis, with the specter of disease ever at your side. It is not the death you would have chosen, perhaps, but it is the one that history, tedious, remorseless, inescapable history, has prepared for you. You live in a world where health is a guessing game played by blindfolded fools, and you, emperor or not, are just another hapless contestant. In your time, Medicine is less a science and more a philosophical debate held over a bowl of rancid wine, where men in expensive robes discuss your fate using words borrowed from Aristotle, Hippocrates, and, when desperate, the local witch. Theories float through the palace air, as thick and confounding as the ever present incense. You, Michael, like everyone else, are a body of humors, not jokes, alas, but four essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They are supposed to slosh about inside you in harmonious balance. When you cough, sweat, bleed, or shiver, your doctors do not see a symptom. They see a cosmic imbalance. They see an opportunity to apply leeches, to recommend a strict regimen of boiled cabbage, or failing that, to suggest an urgent pilgrimage to a saint's relic for a blessing or a miracle. And so, each morning, you awake to a new and contradictory regime. Your physicians are confident, but never consistent. One swears by garlic, the next by abstinence from garlic. A third insists that garlic is harmless, but only if chewed during a lunar eclipse. Every ailment is a riddle, and every cure is a gamble. Do you feel cold? That is an excess of phlegm, easily remedied by bloodletting. Are you feverish? Clearly your blood is too hot, so you must eat something cooling, like cucumbers, but not too many, or you might tip your humors the other way and be lost to a chill. Hospitals exist, but you would be wise not to visit them. They are dim, drafty places, filled with the smells of sweat, fear, and imminent doom. The poor go there to die. The rich, like yourself, keep their dying private, behind palace walls. You are, after all, the emperor. Your suffering must be dignified, even if it is ultimately pointless. Your personal physicians are drawn from every corner of the known world. Some are Greek, steeped in the ancient texts. Others are Italians with mysterious powders in silk purses. There are a few Jews, wise and careful, who tend to keep their heads down and their remedies quiet. Occasionally, a wandering Arab healer arrives, carrying news of some miracle drug from far off lands, something called sugar, perhaps, or camphor. Every new face brings a new hope, and every new hope fades into the same old malaise. Of course, none of these men agree. They quarrel loudly in Latin, Greek, Arabic, and even the vulgar tongue of the kitchens, each defending his own method and denouncing all the others. His Majesty requires bleeding. No, purging. Only prayer can save him. Sometimes you wish you could simply appoint all of them as patriarch and let them sort it out with holy writ and fists. Faith is just as important as medicine. The church prescribes fasting, penance, relics, and candles. The more learned clerics assure you that prayer is at least as effective as leeches, and possibly less likely to result in infection. Your pious mother lights candles at every icon in the palace, while monks read psalms day and night just outside your bedroom, droning on until you almost wish you had gone deaf instead of just sick. Superstition is as much a part of daily life as bread and wine. The evil eye lurks behind every glance, curses slip from jealous lips, and charms are hidden under mattresses and behind doors. Your courtiers, so dignified in public, privately clutch amulets and whisper spells. Your wife's favorite serving maid will swear that you were cursed by a rival, and she will bring you a concoction to drink at midnight, made from herbs gathered in secret places, and, just possibly, a drop of chicken blood. You drink it, of course, because what harm can one more remedy do? The real truth is this: nobody knows anything. The body is a black box, and every attempt to fix it is performed in the dark, by feel, with confidence out of all proportion to knowledge. When you ask your most senior physician, "Will I recover?" he bows, looks grave, and answers, "If it is God's will, Majesty," which is not, strictly speaking, reassuring. And so your days are filled with contradictions. You are told to rest, but also to walk in the gardens for fresh air, to avoid certain foods unless you crave them, in which case you may have a little. You are encouraged to keep your spirits up, but not too much. Laughter can cause dangerous imbalances, after all. You are advised to think pious thoughts, but never about death, unless you are preparing your soul for it, in which case, do not worry, for death comes to us all. It is all so tedious, and yet you play your part. You allow yourself to be bled, blistered, fed peculiar foods, and prayed over by monks who smell of onions. You endure, because to do otherwise is to give in, and emperors never give in, not until their final breath, which in your case seems to be inching ever closer, no matter what anybody says. It starts, as these things always do, in the most unspectacular of ways. You, the emperor, are not struck down by a lightning bolt or felled by a poisoned arrow. Instead, you wake one chilly morning in your gilded chamber, feeling a dull ache in your side, a sensation you almost mistake for having slept in an awkward position. You tell yourself it is nothing, perhaps too much spiced lamb at supper, or maybe the effect of those endless council meetings with their uncomfortable marble benches and endless petitions from men who all seem to want something from you. But then the ache does not go away. In fact, it deepens. Soon you feel a heavy fatigue hanging about your limbs, a leaden exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. Your joints, once merely stiff from disuse or too many hours spent signing decrees, now throb with a deep and persistent pain. Every step is an exercise in endurance. Your courtiers do not notice yet, or perhaps they pretend not to notice, because acknowledging the emperor's discomfort is dangerous, like pointing out a crack in the palace's mighty dome. You ignore the symptoms at first. You are, after all, the emperor, Michael the Restorer, a man who has stared down crusaders, conspirators, and the collapse of an empire. You are not going to be laid low by something as trivial as fatigue. Yet as the days pass, it becomes impossible to deny. The pain spreads, slow and patient. You wake to a sour taste in your mouth and a dry, persistent thirst. Your skin takes on a waxy pallor, and your appetite, always uncertain, now vanishes altogether. Your personal physician, summoned after much coaxing by your worried wife, is all solemn bows and soothing murmurs. He feels your pulse, examines your tongue, asks you embarrassing questions about your bowels. He recommends a mild bleeding to rebalance your humors and suggests a new diet, less meat, more gruel, which does little to improve your spirits. He assures you that this is only a passing weakness, the sort that afflicts all great men in stressful times. The word stress becomes a mantra. Your burdens, your sleepless nights, the endless demands of imperial office. Perhaps, he hints, you should pray more or take the waters at a nearby monastery. Of course, this is only the beginning. After a week, the pain is joined by something sharper, a stabbing beneath your ribs, so acute it nearly brings tears to your eyes in private. You cough, and the sensation is like swallowing shards of broken glass. Your sleep, already poor, becomes fractured and restless. You dream of drowning, of being crushed beneath the weight of unseen enemies, of wandering through empty halls where no one remembers your name. Your courtiers begin to notice. The whispers start. Is the emperor ill? Is it serious? Should we prepare for a succession crisis? Your most loyal servants double their efforts to look cheerful and attentive in your presence, but you can sense the tension. Servants move more quietly. Physicians hover nearby with anxious faces, and even the palace cats watch you with a new and unsettling interest. By the second week, you cannot hide the truth from yourself. The ache is now a constant companion, a gnawing reminder that your body is failing you. You feel chills, then fevers, each more severe than the last. You begin to sweat through your sheets at night, waking clammy and shivering. No matter how many blankets your attendants pile on you, you cannot get warm. You smell wrong to yourself, as if your body is giving off some secret signal of decay. You catch the glances of your attendants, quick, nervous, half afraid. There are days when you rally, when you convince yourself it is just a passing illness, a minor inconvenience. You hold court, dispense justice, listen to interminable reports about the state of the Navy or the latest tax revolts. You force yourself to eat a few mouthfuls, to walk in the gardens, to show the world that the emperor is still strong. But the effort leaves you drained, breathless, and trembling. As soon as you are alone, you collapse onto your bed, every muscle screaming. The remedies begin to multiply. Your physician prescribes tinctures and poultices, strange smelling teas, and warm compresses. When none of it works, he calls in colleagues. Soon, your chamber is a revolving door of doctors, each bringing new opinions and even more ambitious cures. You are bled again, given foul-tasting potions, subjected to all manner of indignities. Some recommend more rest, others demand more activity. Someone even suggests leeches, which makes you wonder if your real punishment is simply being alive at all. Still, nothing helps. Your wife and children watch you with wide, frightened eyes. You see the worry etched on their faces, their silent prayers whenever you close your eyes for more than a few moments. You are aware, in a distant way, that your empire is watching too. News travels fast in palaces, and, and rumors even faster. Already the vultures begin to circle, but you, Michael, are not ready to surrender. Not yet. The pain may be growing, the darkness thickening, but you are still here, emperor, survivor, and now unwilling patient. The first ominous symptoms have come, and they will not be leaving. By now, your illness is no longer a secret, not even a well guarded one. The courtiers have their whispers, the servants have their theories, and every visitor to the palace can sense the sour undertone of dread. As emperor, you are expected to be both more and less than human, a living icon of imperial strength. But your pallor, your shaking hands, your visible discomfort, these are proof that you are, in the end, just another body for death to toy with. And so, as your body betrays you, your world turns to rituals and fears, each one more elaborate than the last. Your advisors, men of learning and piety and deep self interest, are the first to act. They bring you amulets, some made of carved bone, others hung with scraps of holy cloth, a few so ugly you suspect they are meant to frighten off both evil spirits and fashion critics. You dutifully wear these around your neck, wrists, and even tucked inside your slipper. There are whispered words over your head as you try to sleep, muttered blessings and prayers to every saint ever canonized, just in case one of them is particularly attentive tonight. The churchmen are never far. The patriarch himself arrives at your bedside, trailing a cloud of incense so thick it nearly suffocates you. He anoints your forehead with oil and recites prayers in a voice as smooth and practiced as a courtier's lie. He assures you that God has a plan and that suffering purifies the soul, though somehow it always seems to purify the souls of emperors more thoroughly and more frequently than the souls of peasants. Then there are the lesser clergy, the monks and deacons and would-be miracle workers. They chant psalms in endless, hypnotic loops. Sometimes they wave relics over you, a scrap of bone from a saint's finger, a piece of cloth allegedly worn by the Virgin herself. You are too exhausted to protest, and so you simply lie there, eyes half closed, as holy men wave their treasures and their hopes above your sweat-soaked sheets. Of course, religion is not the only force at play. The palace is a hive of private superstitions. Your wife consults astrologers who insist your stars are in a dangerous alignment, that Mars is angry or the moon is jealous. She brings you talismans, potions, and a suspiciously large quantity of garlic. Your mother's old nurse insists on burning bundles of dried herbs in the corners of your room: mugwort for fevers, rue for evil spirits, and something else that smells suspiciously like burnt cabbage. The air grows heavy, pungent, thick enough to choke a lesser man. You cough, and someone takes this as a sign that more incense is needed. The physicians, those eternal optimists, begin to argue with the priests and the astrologers. One city, you awake to find them circling your bed, each presenting a new theory about your decline. It is the result of an imbalance in the humors, insists one. A blockage of the vital spirits, claims another. He has been cursed, whispers a third, glancing suspiciously at your least favorite cousin. You begin to wonder if you might recover simply by leaving the palace and escaping their combined efforts. But you are not allowed to leave. Your bed has become your throne, your prison, and your altar. The daily rituals intensify. Priests sprinkle holy water in your room. The palace alchemists concoct yet another potion, this one a lurid green, and your wife stands by, clutching a rosary so tightly her knuckles turn white. You catch her praying with a fervor that frightens you, not because you doubt her faith, but because you suspect she is praying for your soul, not your recovery. Fear hangs over everything. It seeps into the marble, curls beneath the rugs, huddles in the corners where the candlelight cannot reach. It is not just your fear, though yours is enough for any 10 men. It is the fear of your family, who will rule if you die. The fear of your advisors, will their enemies take revenge? The fear of the common people, will God punish the empire for the sins of its emperor? And above all, there is the ancient, unspoken fear that none of these rituals, no matter how elaborate, how sincere, how ancient, will change anything at all. The saints are silent, the relics inert, the stars indifferent. Your fever burns on, heedless of prayer or potion. You see it in the eyes of everyone who enters your room, the dawning realization that for all their words and actions, death cannot be bribed, flattered, or reasoned with. Death is coming. It does not care for your rituals or your fears. You lie there and let them do their work. Sometimes you feel almost outside yourself, watching the scene as if it were a passion play performed for your entertainment. Priests intoning, courtiers pacing, wives weeping, servants scurrying, doctors arguing. You wonder, with a kind of exhausted amusement, whether any of it has made you even a little bit better. The answer, as always, is no. But the rituals go on, because to stop is to admit defeat. And so you submit to another day of prayers, potions, and pointless ceremony, because sometimes ritual is the only thing standing between a terrified empire and utter chaos. By now, you have surrendered any illusion that your illness is a passing inconvenience. The empire can pretend, the court can whisper, and the church can pray, but your body is staging a slow and determined mutiny. Naturally, this means it is time for your physicians to step up and demonstrate all the medical wisdom the 13th century has to offer, a display that quickly becomes a farce worthy of any Athenian stage. Your lead physician, whose beard is magnificent, if not entirely clean, announces that the problem, as always, is an imbalance of humors. He produces a chart, freshly copied from Galen, with circles, arrows, and mysterious stains. After much humming, hawing, and a consultation with the stars, because astrology naturally guides medicine, the consensus is reached. You need bloodletting. You are not squeamish. You have seen men bleed in battle. You have, on more than one occasion, ordered it. But it is another thing entirely to lie in your own bed, arm bared, as a nervous man with a blunt knife leans over you, looking for a vein as if searching for buried treasure. The process is every bit as unpleasant as you imagine and considerably less effective. Blood pools in a bowl, you feel weaker, not lighter. Your physicians nod and tell you that weakness is a sign the treatment is working. Then come the poultices, strange smelling concoctions of herbs, animal fat, and something suspiciously like mud, all packed onto your skin and wrapped in linen. One poultice is meant to draw out bad humors, another is intended to reduce fever, and a third, your favorite, is supposed to align your inner stars, though no one explains how. Each is applied with much ceremony and even more confidence. You lie there, marinating in disappointment, sweating beneath layers of increasingly filthy cloth. The next round involves herbal teas and decoctions. These are prepared with great care in the palace kitchens, under the suspicious gaze of your food taster, who has begun to look as ill as you feel. You are instructed to drink infusions of wormwood, sage, and fennel, occasionally mixed with honey, to mask the bitterness, though the honey, of course, might overheat the liver. You try to choke down every cup, making a mental note of which mixtures cause the least immediate regret. None of them bring relief. There is a brief flirtation with more exotic remedies. A Jewish physician suggests ground pearls dissolved in vinegar, claiming it is a Persian secret for vitality. An Arab doctor arrives with a jar of something called camphor, promising it will cool your fever and ease your breath. An Italian, ever practical, recommends roasted apples stuffed with cloves and honey, almost a comfort, until the cloves get stuck in your teeth. You try them all, because what else is left? After a week, there is a general consensus that you are, astonishingly, not improved. Your physicians gather for another council. They argue, gesticulate, and accuse each other of incompetence. One demands leeches, another insists you must fast, a third suggests immersing yourself in a warm bath, supervised by monks reciting psalms. You begin to suspect that the only thing being cured is your hope. Your family watches this parade of treatments with increasing alarm. Your wife hovers by your bedside, clutching rosaries and glaring at each new remedy as if daring it to fail. Your children peer through the doorway, uncertain whether to fear your illness or the men treating it. The court grows restless. Rumors swirl that the emperor is dying, that the doctors are witches, that perhaps you have been cursed by the pope, a popular theory in certain circles. As the attempts at treatment pile up, so do the side effects. You are bled until your arms are marked with bruises, and your veins refuse to cooperate. You are poulticed until your skin blisters. Your bowels rebel against the herbal concoctions, and you begin to develop a deep distrust of anyone approaching with a cup or a spoon. The pain remains, stubborn and unmoved. Your fever ebbs and surges. At times, you wonder if your only real ailment is an excess of medical attention. Yet, for all the discomfort, there is something oddly reassuring about the rituals of treatment. They are proof that someone, somewhere, is still trying to help, even if their help is likely to be lethal. The palace bustles with activity. There are always footsteps outside your chamber, murmurs in the hallway, the clatter of bowls and cups. In this strange new world, your illness is no longer just a private misery, but a public performance played out for the anxious empire and the endlessly inventive healers. You, Michael, play your part well. You submit to every treatment, drink every foul potion, and nod at every hopeful pronouncement. Because what is the alternative? To do nothing is to admit defeat, and emperors do not surrender, not even to their own failing flesh. If you are to die, and the thought crosses your mind more often than you care to admit, you will do so surrounded by all the rituals, all the remedies, all the absurd hopes of your age. And so the farce continues. Another day, another bleeding, another dose of optimism. The only thing more persistent than your fever is the belief that somewhere among all these treatments there must be an answer. After all, you are the emperor. If anyone is to be cured, surely it must be you. There comes a moment as day blurs into night and night returns to day when you realize the treatments have become a kind of grim ritual all their own. Your body, battered and bled, has failed to respond to optimism, prayer, and every herbal poultice the empire can provide. The illness digs in, stubborn and methodical, as if it has staked a claim in your royal flesh and now refuses to yield a single inch. Each day, you awaken to new miseries. What began as aches and fever has grown into a catalog of symptoms, each clamoring for attention. Your head pounds with a deep, resonant ache that no amount of chanting or cold compress can soothe. Your eyes water endlessly, making even candlelight a torment. Your throat, raw and swollen, rebels at every attempt to swallow even the mildest broth. You cough, a hollow, racking sound that echoes in the marble corridors and reminds everyone, including yourself, just how fragile the emperor truly is. It becomes clear, even to the most optimistic physician, that you are not improving. The council of doctors grows larger, opinions louder, cures more desperate. Where once you were subjected to a single daily bleeding, you now endure several, each justified by a different theory, each leaving you weaker. Your arms bear the marks of needles and knives. Your sheets are stained, and the bowls of blood have become a fixture at your bedside, like particularly grim bouquets. The herbs become stranger, the concoctions fouler. One morning, you are presented with a cup of something so pungent that even the serving boy winces. You force it down because you have no choice, because hope, like illness, is hard to kill. When the pain does not subside, your doctors blame the last physician's incompetence and prescribe something even more questionable. You are advised to eat roasted onions wrapped in sheep's fat, to drink a syrup of figs and vinegar, and, at one memorable low point, to apply a paste of crushed snails to your chest to draw out the bad air. You do these things not because you believe in them, but because it is easier than arguing. Your sleep is a battlefield. You are woken by fever dreams, visions of burning cities, faceless crowds, the slow, relentless approach of something you cannot name. The sheets are always damp, twisted around your body, like the shrouds they are clearly rehearsing to become. Servants turn you gently from side to side, speaking in whispers as if the illness itself might overhear them and take offense. Hygiene, never a strong point of your era, is now a sick joke. The more your body fails you, the more you are surrounded by well meaning hands, each bringing fresh water, clean cloths, and the latest miracle imported from the edges of the known world. But nothing feels clean. The stench of sweat, sour and metallic, clings to your skin. The chamber is thick with the smells of decay, old incense, rotting fruit, and the indefinable musk of approaching death. Your world shrinks to the size of your bedchamber. The palace beyond may still hum with intrigue and ambition, but you see only the painted ceiling above you, the flickering shadows cast by the lamps, and the faces of those who come and go in an endless parade: doctors, priests, anxious family members, and servants whose expressions are carefully neutral. Sometimes you catch a look, pity, fear, or something colder, and you wonder what they see, the emperor or simply another dying man. As your mind weakens, so too does your control over your own body. There are days when your limbs refuse to cooperate, when your speech slurs, when your memory slips. You lose track of time, meals are forgotten, conversations trail off. You are haunted by flashes of the past, your first victory in battle, your triumphal return to Constantinople, the faces of friends and enemies, blurred now into a single, unending procession. You realize, with a mix of anger and resignation, that history is indifferent to pain. Empires rise and fall, and in the end, the body always wins. Your physicians never agree on a diagnosis. They argue over the shape and color of your urine, the heat of your skin, the nature of your dreams. One believes you are dying of melancholy. Another insists it is a fever of the blood. A third sees the unmistakable hand of the devil. You are the axis around which their theories spin, and none of them are willing to admit defeat. But defeat is what you feel. You are Michael, emperor of a crumbling world, and you are being unmade not by war or conspiracy, but by your own failing flesh. You endure because there is nothing else to do. The illness progresses, and you are carried with it, step by painful step, down a road that offers no return. And somewhere, beneath all the pain and ritual, a quiet terror begins to grow. The sense that this, finally, is the end you have spent a lifetime postponing. You may be dying, but life in the palace is as lively as ever. If anything, your illness is a kind of feast for the ambitious. It is said that the fish rot from the head, and in your empire, the scent of decay travels quickly through the gilded halls. Now, as you lie in your sick bed, every whisper, every footstep in the corridor, every polite smile takes on a sinister edge. You are not the only one counting your remaining days. Everyone with a title or a claim is making calculations. Your absence from public life, no matter how carefully managed, cannot be hidden. Ministers jostle outside your chambers, pretending concern while measuring each other's power. Some make a show of devotion, sending baskets of fruit or rare medicines, always conveniently timed to coincide with your physician's rounds. Others are less subtle, sending envoys to the patriarch, hinting that the empire needs spiritual stability, by which they mean, of course, that they should be in charge of it. Every visit is political theater. Your eldest son appears with a face of grave concern, his words polished and formal. He assures you the army remains loyal, the treasury is secure, the peasants are docile. You recognize the subtle rehearsals for a new reign. Your wife prays at your bedside, but she is also seen whispering with her own kin, quietly rallying her branch of the family. Your brothers, those lifelong competitors, maintain a respectful distance but send regular messages, coded, cautious, always carefully phrased to be either condolences or congratulations, depending on which way the wind is blowing. Outside your bedchamber, factions stir and shift. Some of your advisors place their bets on continuity, others on radical change. Men who once spat venom at one another over trifles now meet behind closed doors, suddenly eager to find common ground. You catch snippets of their conversations. If the emperor should pass, and we must be ready for all contingencies. The words regency, succession, and stability echo through the halls, repeated by men whose loyalty is as transient as the morning fog. Even your physicians are not immune to the lure of politics. The chief physician, usually content to fuss over charts and humors, is now seen in private conference with high-ranking courtiers. You wonder how many of his remedies are chosen for their medical merit, and how many are meant to curry favor with whichever party seems most likely to rise. After all, the healer of an emperor who survives can expect a great reward. The physician of an emperor who dies may need friends in high places to avoid an awkwardly short career. Every now and then, rumors trickle in from the city. The merchants gossip in the markets. The clergy whisper in the churches. Is the emperor dead? Is he bewitched? Has he abdicated? Some claim you have already named a successor. Others claim your body is being secretly replaced with a look-alike to avoid panic. Each tale grows taller with the telling. The truth, as always, is far less exciting. You are simply fading, day by day, hour by hour, while the machinery of state lurches and creaks, desperate for direction. There are moments, even in your fever, when you feel the palace watching you. You know that every cough, every missed audience, every delay in issuing a decree is interpreted as an omen. Spies, yours and others, flit through the corridors, ears open, eyes alert. Loyalists report every gesture, every visitor, every gift. Meanwhile, those with more flexible morals begin to hedge their bets, offering small, silent bribes to both your supporters and your rivals. The intrigue is relentless and exhausting, and you are too weak to play the game as you once did. Decisions are made in your name that you do not remember approving. Edicts appear with your seal, but not your words. The machinery of government, never smooth at the best of times, begins to sputter and groan. Ministers seek approval from your bedside, then immediately undermine each other in private, all while proclaiming undying loyalty to your face. You, Michael, see all this with a mixture of amusement and despair. You remember the long nights of your youth, the countless hours spent plotting, bargaining, surviving in a world where every friend could become an enemy by morning. You know how the game is played. Now, as you lie between clean sheets, watching your empire squabble over your legacy, you realize that the only certainty in Byzantine politics is uncertainty itself. The real tragedy is that you have no energy to intervene. Even if you wished to, the fever chains you to the bed, your thoughts drifting between the present and the past. You are forced to trust, and trusting in the imperial court is rather like swimming with sharks. Everyone smiles, but you know the teeth are just beneath the surface. The palace is alive with ambition, fear, and anticipation. Your illness has become their opportunity. You have become a backdrop to their schemes, a living memento mori for an empire always one breath away from chaos. In the end, you realize it is not your death they await, but the chance to remake the world in their own image. And so, as you fade, the palace grows more vibrant, more cutthroat, more alive. For you, the world is growing smaller, dimmer. For them, it is a time of wild possibility. The emperor weakens, the empire sharpens its knives. You have always thought of your body as a stubborn old warhorse, battered maybe, but loyal enough to drag you through one more campaign, one more negotiation, one more night of tedious ceremonial banquets. But now you feel your flesh betraying you with the slow, inexorable certainty of a siege engine at work on ancient city walls, where once your aches were passing and your strength merely diminished. Now every movement is an effort measured in pain and breathlessness. You try to sit up in bed, but your arms tremble. You lift a cup of water, and your hand shakes so violently you splash your chest with each attempt. The weight of the crown has become literal. You feel it in your bones, in the endless fatigue that clings to you like a sodden cloak. Your legs, once strong enough to pace the halls in restless frustration, are now barely able to bear your weight. The few times you insist on walking, out of sheer imperial pride, you are accompanied by a nervous servant and a pair of anxious physicians who treat you as though you might shatter with a single misstep. Each journey is short, punctuated by stops to catch your breath and disguise your growing panic. Eating, once a pleasure and a rare distraction from matters of state, is now a torment. Your mouth is dry, your throat raw, and your appetite gone. The palace kitchens send up endless trays, rich broths, stewed fruits, sweetmeats dusted with spices you once demanded as tribute. None of it tempts you. The very smell of food makes you queasy. You force down a few spoonfuls here and there, more for the sake of the anxious faces watching than from any real hunger. As days pass, your skin becomes pale and waxen, stretched tight across sharp bones. You notice your reflection in a polished silver mirror. The face is gaunt, eyes sunken, beard patchy. The man who once commanded armies now looks like a specter haunting his own palace. When servants change your linens, more often now, as your sweat has grown cold and constant, they do so with a new, professional gentleness, the kind one uses for the terminally ill or the very old. You lose control of your own body in ways both humiliating and inevitable. There are days when you cannot rise from bed, when you soil yourself and must rely on others for even the smallest dignity. The physicians assure you this is not unusual. Your family assures you that you are still their father and husband. No one is convinced, least of all you. Sleep, when it comes, is troubled and thin. You drift in and out of uneasy dreams, memories of battles and triumphs, old arguments and reconciliations, fragments of prayers whispered in the dark. Sometimes the line between dream and waking blurs. You think you hear voices, loved ones calling, old friends and enemies alike. At times you find yourself speaking to the dead, apologizing to ghosts for sins you cannot remember, making promises you know you will not keep. Your physicians, desperate to stave off the inevitable, become ever more inventive. The bloodlettings continue, though you barely have the strength to protest. New ointments are smeared across your chest and limbs, leaving you sticky and cold. Each day brings a new potion, a new flavor of hope, a new disappointment. You submit because you have no energy left to resist, because doing nothing feels like surrender, and emperors are not supposed to surrender, even as they fade. Your mind falters with your body. Words slip away mid-sentence. Names and faces blur, sometimes replaced by visions of long-dead kin or saints whose stories you only half recall. The line of succession becomes a distant, academic concern. The only thing that matters is the pain in your bones and the heaviness in your chest. The palace staff move quietly now, voices soft, footsteps muffled. Conversations cease when you enter a room, then resume in nervous whispers as soon as you pass. You become aware of a strange duality. To the empire, you are still the emperor, a figure of authority and destiny. To those who see you up close, you are simply a dying man, frail and frightened, shrinking into the sheets. You do not rage, you do not bargain, You do not beg. You have lived too long in the shadow of death to expect mercy now. Instead, you lie still, eyes half closed, feeling the slow retreat of life from your extremities inward. Your world narrows to the circle of lamplight, the rhythm of your faltering breath, and the slow, ceaseless march of pain. This, then, is how an emperor dies, not on the battlefield, not at the tip of an assassin's dagger, but piece by piece, as the body fails and dignity slips quietly away. The empire waits, the court whispers, and you, Michael, can do nothing but endure the last, longest campaign of all. As your body continues its slow surrender, the palace reacts with the only weapons it has left: panic and ritual, both applied with increasing desperation. The great Byzantine machine, so expert in ceremony and pageantry, now mobilizes all its resources for a new kind of battle, the battle against your death. For every breath you lose, a new ritual is invented. For every sign of decline, a new measure is taken. You, Michael, become the object of a frenetic, almost comical campaign against the inevitable. Panic is everywhere, though everyone pretends otherwise. Your wife, once the picture of imperial composure, flutters from chapel to chapel, lighting candles in rapid succession. She presses relics into your hands: a sliver of a saint's shin bone, a patch of cloth allegedly touched by the Virgin herself, a stone said to have come from Christ's tomb. These sacred objects pile up at your bedside until you wonder whether you are meant to be cured or simply buried under the weight of their holiness. The palace chaplains, sensing the urgency, escalate their efforts. Monks gather in your chamber, chanting prayers in a droning chorus that seems to grow louder and faster with each passing day. The air thickens with incense, so heavy it coats your tongue, making it hard to breathe. A particularly devout deacon suggests a procession around your bed, bearing icons, banners, and enough holy water to flood the Bosphorus. You agree, if only because resistance requires more energy than you possess. Priests debate which saints are most effective against your particular affliction. One recommends Saint Pantaleimon for healing. Another insists on Saint Demetrius for strength. A third champions Saint Luke, the patron of physicians, though you suspect the doctors might have paid for that endorsement. Each new icon is paraded in with solemn ceremony and reverent incantation. You lie in the midst of it all, too weary to care whether you are being healed, protected, or simply distracted. Superstition, always the empire's silent partner, now reigns unchecked. Courtiers leave offerings of garlic and salt at your door. Servants sprinkle holy water on every surface. Your mother's nurse appears with an ancient charm, a coin wrapped in red thread, buried in a loaf of bread, to be kept under your pillow. Every old wives' tale is dusted off and pressed into service. You watch, bemused, as nobles with the finest classical educations secretly spit 3 times over their shoulders when they leave your room. The doctors, for their part, do not surrender their authority without a fight. New cures are proposed daily, each more far-fetched than the last. One morning, you wake to find leeches crawling across your chest, applied in the hope of drawing out the corrupt humors. The next, you are subjected to a balancing regimen of cold baths and hot compresses, administered in an endless, shivering cycle. When these fail, an astrologer is summoned to consult the heavens. His findings are inconclusive but alarming. Mars is in retrograde and Venus is sulking. The message is clear. There is nothing more to be done, but everyone must keep doing something. Your family members fall into their own patterns of anxious activity. Your children take turns reading psalms at your bedside, their voices quavering as they rush through verses, eyes flicking nervously to your face for any sign of improvement. Your brothers send for their own priests, just in case the official clergy have overlooked a key ritual. At night, you hear your wife's quiet weeping, muffled by the heavy curtains. Even the servants grow restless, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting to see death itself stalking the hallways. Outside your chamber, the palace is in uproar. News of your decline leaks through the city, sparking waves of fear and anticipation. The populace lights candles in every church, processions wind through the streets, chanting prayers for your recovery, or, depending on one's political leanings, for your peaceful passage to the next world. Merchants sell new amulets, promising protection against the imperial illness. The empire holds its breath, waiting for news, for a miracle, for the next rumor. You, Michael, drift through it all in a kind of exhausted haze. The rituals become a background hum, a perpetual performance staged for your benefit and the benefit of all who hope you will either recover or finally make way for what comes next. In rare, lucid moments, you almost admire their determination, this collective refusal to let nature take its course. You are a battlefield now, fought over by priests, doctors, and the superstitious hopes of a trembling empire. It would be comical if it were not so exhausting. Every ritual, every panic-stricken gesture, every new superstition is another reminder that power, for all its trappings, cannot hold back the dark. No one can admit it, but everyone knows. The more elaborate the ritual, the closer you are to the end. Panic drives them to ever greater heights of ceremony. Ritual soothes nothing except, perhaps, the guilty conscience of those who already see themselves in your place. And so you endure another day of holy water and incantation, cold compress and burning incense, words whispered in a dozen languages to saints who, like you, must be growing weary of all the noise. Panic and ritual, your final retinue, more persistent than any army, more loyal than any friend. If the rituals in your chamber grow more elaborate and desperate, your physician's efforts reach heights that would be comical if they were not aimed at your own ever more pathetic flesh. Once, your medical staff projected the cool confidence of men trained in ancient wisdom. They spoke in measured tones, scribbled notes in Latin and Greek, and looked down their noses at one another over questions of spleens and bile. Now, their confidence has evaporated like cheap wine in the sun, replaced by the frantic energy of gamblers on a losing streak. The consultation at your bedside is no longer a conference of learned men, but a bickering contest. One physician advocates bleeding and blisters, insisting your humors are dangerously imbalanced. Another rails against such barbarism and prescribes mild broths and gentle exercise. A third, summoned from the far western provinces and still smelling of sea travel, recommends a course of dried figs and camel's milk, declaring it a miracle of the Levant. The Jewish physician, quieter than the rest, mumbles about the merits of pomegranate syrup, but is ignored as usual, except when someone needs a scapegoat. Tempers flare, arguments break out in low Latin and muttered Greek. The monks take sides, the servants place bets. Someone is always storming out of the room in a huff, only to return later with an essential new scroll or potion. Sometimes, to your fogged mind, it seems as if you are less a patient and more a test case, a human battleground for theories, reputations, and egos. Your own body, that poor, battered laboratory, is subject to ever stranger experiments. In the morning, your veins are opened. By afternoon, your brow is anointed with oils so pungent that the stench lingers for days. You are forced to inhale the smoke of burning herbs until your eyes water. When your fever spikes, they wrap you in cold, damp sheets and chant psalms over your shivering form. When it dips, they pile hot bricks at your feet and swaddle you in wool. Nothing works, but everything is tried. Some new treatments are so outlandish that even your family stares in disbelief. One evening, a doctor arrives bearing a caged weasel and proclaims that the animal's presence will draw out your sickness. The weasel is placed under your bed, where it looks as miserable as you feel. Another brings a recipe involving pulverized emeralds. Your courtiers blanch at the expense, but what is a few gems compared to the life of an emperor? It tastes exactly as you might imagine. The Greek physician proposes a musical cure. A lyre player sits at your bedside, strumming a droning melody to soothe the vital spirits. You suspect even the lyre is losing patience. No one wants to admit it, but the physicians have lost control. They see it in your declining pulse, your labored breathing, your skin grown yellow and slack. Their elaborate theories falter when confronted with your raw mortality. They begin to defer to one another, seeking consensus in the absence of hope. Consultations stretch into hours. Decisions are made, then swiftly abandoned. A parade of second and third opinions traipses through your chamber, all bearing the same verdict. The emperor is dying, and no one dares say it aloud. Your family, ever watchful, grows more anxious. Your wife weeps less and prays for more. Your children, once shooed away from your sickbed, now stand watch, silent and pale. The servants tiptoe, their usual gossip muted. Your brothers visit, careful to look sorrowful, but you see calculation in their eyes. They are weighing the odds, already imagining the world without you. Worst of all, your own sense of dignity begins to slip. The physicians, once content to consult, now prod and peer at you with the cold detachment of men studying a specimen. Privacy is a lost cause. Your body is no longer your own. When your bowels betray you, no one flinches. When you cry out in pain, they record the sound, looking for patterns. You drift in and out of consciousness, a passive participant in your own decline. As the doctors grow more desperate, so do the remedies. More bloodletting, more purges, more obscure concoctions. One day, you find yourself swallowing a potion made from earthworms and honey on the authority of an ancient scroll no one bothers to translate. Another morning, you are slathered in goose fat and cinnamon, then left to sweat it out beneath heavy blankets. With every new remedy, hope fades further. There are moments when you almost wish they would simply stop, let you rest in peace and silence. But the physicians press on, unable to let go of the emperor, unwilling to accept the lesson your body has already learned. Even the greatest cannot be saved by the wisdom of the age. And so you linger, the unwilling star of a grim medical farce, watched over by a circle of men who have exhausted every cure but cannot admit defeat. Outside your window, the empire turns, indifferent to your suffering. Inside, your body slips further away, taking your dignity, your privacy, and soon enough, your life. It is one thing to suffer in the abstract, to feel your body unravel beneath the impersonal gaze of physicians and priests. It is quite another to face the tangled web of your own life as it tightens around you. As your illness advances, your sickbed becomes a confessional, unwilling perhaps, but inescapable. Pain strips away your titles, your crowns, your victories, leaving only the person you are beneath the gilded mask. You are Michael, and you remember everything. In the long hours of fever and delirium, the past comes to visit. Sometimes it is the familiar, nagging voice of regret. You see faces, some beloved, some despised, many simply forgotten by the world, but not by you. There is your father, stern and ambitious, whose shadow you have never quite escaped. There are your rivals, dispatched with a signature or a sword, their eyes accusing you in dreams. You think of your allies, those who pledged loyalty for a season and vanished at the first sign of trouble. The empire you fought so hard to hold together has always been an empire of shifting faces and shifting fates. You recall, too, your greatest triumphs, though even they are tinged with bitterness now. Your return to Constantinople, the banners waving, the city ablaze with hope. You can still taste the dust and smoke. Yet for every parade, there is a price. Each triumph is followed by a reckoning, a failed alliance, a trusted friend lost, a promise broken. Sometimes you wonder if the only real constant in your reign has been disappointment. Your family gathers around you, the drama of their lives now interwoven with your decline. Your wife, loyal and fierce, refuses to leave your side. You see the toll your illness takes on her, her face etched with sleepless worry, her words growing sharper as she fends off meddling courtiers and intrusive priests. She speaks to you gently, as though to a child, but her eyes never stop searching your face for signs of improvement or surrender. Your children come and go, bearing gifts and reassurances. The eldest recites the lines of succession, subtly reminding you of the legacy at stake. The younger ones, not yet schooled in imperial politics, ask only if you will get better. Their innocence is almost unbearable. You remember holding them as infants, their chubby fists grasping your finger, their laughter echoing in the palace corridors. Now you can barely lift your hand to touch their hair. There are private moments, too, that no one else sees. The silent tears you shed in the night, mourning not just your own fate, but the future you fear for those you love. The whispered confessions to your confessor, the promises to be more merciful, more just, more forgiving, if only you had more time. You ask forgiveness for things you can barely articulate, for moments of cruelty, for decisions made in haste, for loving the empire more than your own family. Sometimes you suspect the saints are as weary of your apologies as you are of making them. You are not a saint, and you know it. The old stories of emperors dying bravely, uttering final words of wisdom, seem laughably distant. Your death, if it is to be heroic, will be heroic only in its ordinariness. There is no glory in lingering pain, no poetry in the slow retreat of flesh and will. You wish sometimes for a quick end, a sword, an assassin, a fall from a horse, something clean and decisive. Instead, you are left with the slow unwinding of your life, a daily peeling away of what little dignity remains. The court, for all its intrigue, cannot ignore the human drama playing out in your chamber. Servants pause longer than necessary, their eyes wet. Old friends risk a final visit, speaking words of comfort that ring hollow, both of you aware of the lies embedded in every "you will recover." The lines between duty and affection blur. You see pity on faces that once reflected only respect or fear. It is a strange kind of intimacy, forced by proximity to death. You find yourself thinking about faith, about what comes next. The priests assure you of heaven, so long as you repent and believe. The philosophers, if they could speak honestly, would remind you that all things pass, even empires, even emperors, even regrets. You wish for certainty, but find only more questions. If you could rise from bed, you would pace the halls as you once did, seeking answers in the sound of your own footsteps. Now you settle for the distant echo of memory. This is personal drama at its most real, the quiet reckoning of a life nearly finished. The world outside your window may tremble and conspire, but here, in the sick room, only the simplest truths matter. You loved and were loved. You hurt and were hurt. The crown, for all its weight, is nothing compared to the ache in your heart as you realize just how ordinary and how precious that makes you. And so you lie there, emperor and man, surrounded by family, haunted by the past, awaiting whatever comes next. In the end, all drama, even that of an emperor, is private. By now, your illness has become more than a personal tragedy. It is an imperial spectacle, a drama performed not only in the palace, but whispered across the city, in every church, every tavern, every cramped market stall. News in Byzantium is never merely reported, it is embroidered, reshaped, and embroidered again until fact and fantasy are as tangled as the roots of an old olive tree. Within the palace, the tension is a living thing. Each day, a different rumor flutters through the corridors like a frightened bird. Today, they say your fever has broken and you are moments from full recovery. Tomorrow, it is whispered you have not spoken for days and can no longer recognize your own sons. A week ago, a servant swore she saw you dead already, only for you to miraculously appear at the window later that afternoon, squinting into the sun and cursing the noise below. Outside, in the streets of Constantinople, the rumors are wilder still. The emperor is dying. The emperor is already dead. The emperor has been bewitched by his enemies, struck down by the evil eye, or poisoned by an unscrupulous physician, usually whichever one is least popular with the crowd at that particular moment. Some even whisper that you are being punished by God for your policies, your alliances, or your refusal to favor one patriarch over another. You almost admire the creativity. In the absence of facts, fear becomes its own source of authority. Priests warn that your suffering is a sign for the empire, a judgment, or a test. Astrologers study the night sky and see omens in every wandering planet, every eclipse, every bright-tailed comet. Your subjects, whose lives you have ruled for decades, are suddenly experts in imperial medicine, succession law, and celestial portents. Inside your bedchamber, the sense of foreboding thickens like the incense that never leaves the air. Your closest advisors bring you news wrapped in caution. Your Majesty, the people pray for you, they murmur, leaving unspoken the question of who will lead if their prayers are unanswered. Others avoid your gaze, eyes flickering to the floor as if in hope you will not notice their fear. You can almost hear the empire holding its breath. There is a strange honesty to the rumors, a truth hidden in the exaggeration. Your illness is not just a personal affair, it is the axis upon which the empire now tilts. Every uncertainty about your fate becomes an uncertainty about the future, and so every shadow in your room becomes a shadow across Byzantium. You are both less and more than yourself, less a man, more a symbol, a vessel into which every hope and terror is poured. Foreboding infects even the smallest moments. The simple act of falling asleep is now fraught with anxiety, not only your own, but that of everyone around you. Your wife prays at your bedside, pausing to glance at you each time your breath falters. Servants tiptoe with the gravity of mourners, as if afraid to wake a ghost. The palace clock ticks too loudly. a metronome marking the slow approach of something no one can name but everyone expects. At night, dreams come thick and fast, heavy with symbols. You walk the palace corridors, but they are empty, the torches burned out, the windows dark. You descend a staircase that never ends, footsteps echoing into silence. Sometimes you find yourself standing before a locked door, knowing, somehow, that on the other side waits the sum of all your unfinished business. You wake with your heart racing, surrounded by the worried faces of those who love you and those who only love what you represent. As your health declines, the city's anxiety becomes the empire's. In distant provinces, governors write hurried letters, asking for reassurance, for orders, for a sign that authority endures. Some hoard supplies, others send envoys to the palace, each hoping to gain favor or at least avoid blame when the transition comes. You sense the machinery of empire stuttering, all because the body that sits at its center is faltering. You are Michael, emperor and invalid, and your body has become a kind of prophecy. The city listens to every rumor, each word a spark in the dry tinder of uncertainty. Your very breath, shallow and uneven, seems to echo through the marble halls, across the city walls, and down to the crowded docks where sailors wager on how many days the emperor has left. The truth is that the future you once shaped with command and decree now feels as uncertain as the next sunrise. The empire waits, caught between hope and dread, every rumor a new omen, every silence a cause for panic. You are both participant and spectator, trapped in a drama whose ending everyone predicts, but no one can quite believe. And so you lie in your bed, surrounded by shadows and the ceaseless murmurs of an empire on the edge, feeling the weight of every rumor and every unspoken fear. The night is long, and the air is thick with foreboding. Even now, you wonder, not for the first time, whether you will see the dawn. By now, the grand machinery of the empire, its rituals, its prayers, its endless parade of physicians, has slowed to a crawl, as if the world itself is waiting for your next breath. But the only thing that refuses to slow, the one aspect of your existence that seems eager to hasten its pace, is the pain. Pain is your new sovereign. It claims every waking moment, every restless dream. There is pain in your bones, a cold gnawing ache that no fire can chase away. There is pain in your joints, sharp and hot, flaring each time you shift your weight or attempt the indignity of sitting up. Your head pulses with a slow, relentless rhythm, a drumbeat that mocks every whispered prayer for relief. Even your skin aches, growing so sensitive that the mere touch of a servant arranging your sheets feels like a fresh wound. The fever, your old and loyal companion, has changed its tactics. No longer just a gentle warmth, it is now a tidal wave that leaves you delirious, gasping for breath, soaked with sweat, and then suddenly shivering so violently your teeth chatter in your mouth. Your body is no longer your own. Sometimes you drift out of consciousness entirely, returning only to find the world rearranged, new faces at your bedside, new concoctions cooling on the table, new prayers muttered under unfamiliar breath. Agony strips away the last layers of imperial dignity. Your mind, desperate for escape, latches onto memories and hallucinations alike. You see old enemies come to gloat. You see your mother, young and beautiful, singing to you in the nursery. You see the walls of Constantinople in flames, the sky a sickly purple as the city falls once more to unseen enemies. You cry out, sometimes in anger, sometimes in terror, sometimes in languages you did not realize you remembered. And yet the pain persists, stubborn as ever. It is not the swift, heroic agony of the battlefield or the knife. This is the slow agony of disease, a wearing down, a grinding away of self and soul. At times you beg for water, only to choke on the smallest sip. Your throat is so raw, it feels like swallowing glass. At other times, you plead for the cool touch of a cloth, for a draught of air, for anything to remind you that the world outside your suffering still exists. Those around you can do little but bear witness. Your wife tries to soothe you, but her hands tremble. Your children, summoned to your side, retreat in fear from the spectacle of your suffering, their eyes wide, their cheeks wet. The physicians, now more gaunt and exhausted than you ever remember seeing them, hover like anxious shadows, trying to agree on whether to bleed you again or simply let you drift. Priests take turns reciting prayers and psalms, their voices blending into the rhythm of your pain, a murmur that grows fainter each day. You begin to lose track of time. The days and nights blur together, punctuated only by the rise and fall of the agony. Sometimes, in a rare moment of clarity, you wonder how much longer this can last. You remember other men, friends and rivals alike, who seemed so strong and unassailable, now dust in forgotten tombs. You think of the empire, still grinding on outside your chamber, an indifferent world that will outlast you as it has outlasted so many before. Yet there are brief moments of peace, when exhaustion finally overwhelms pain, when you drift into oblivion for a few precious hours, only to return to the same familiar torment. You hear the rumors swirling in the corridor, the voices of courtiers arguing over your successor, the priests reminding your family that your soul must be prepared. These things barely register now, distant echoes drowned out by the endless, all consuming ache. The line between agony and oblivion thins. Sometimes you are unsure if you are awake or dreaming. You see faces hovering above you, lips moving, but their words are lost in the fog. You feel the press of a cool hand against your brow and try to hold on to it, but even this comfort slips away. The world narrows to the point of pain, the certainty of suffering, the slow, stubborn refusal of your body to yield. This, then, is your end, not the glorious, fiery exit of legend, but the long, smoldering agony that humbles even an emperor. You have become a lesson for all who watch, that pain, in the end, is the only absolute, the final truth that no ritual, No prayer, no love can spare you. The agony lingers, and with it, your final dignity ebbs, leaving behind only a body and a name, soon to be just another memory in the long and different history of the world. Now that your suffering has reached its crescendo and your body is all but spent, the machinery of faith cranks into its highest gear. As emperor, you have always stood as both a political and a spiritual figure, the anointed of God, the defender of orthodoxy, the one who sits closest to heaven and yet remains so terribly earthbound. It is only fitting, then, that as you approach your end, every ritual of the church is marshaled to prepare you for your final journey. The priests, who have never been far from your door, now become a constant presence. Their procession is endless and solemn, like the slow moving of planets around a dying sun. There is a schedule now, a rota of services and sacraments, each performed with increasing urgency, as if they can outpace the approach of death by sheer devotion. The great icons of the saints are brought from the palace chapel and arranged in your chamber, their painted eyes staring down from every surface. Candles burn day and night, their wax pooling in ornate golden holders. The air is thick with incense, so heavy it feels as though you are breathing in clouds, your lungs filling with frankincense and the prayers of the anxious. Occasionally, the thick smoke makes you cough, and this is interpreted by some as a sign of the devil's resistance, by others as a final, involuntary act of worship. The most senior of the priests, robed in gold and crimson, arrives to administer the sacrament of holy unction. Oil is brushed onto your brow and hands, each movement slow and deliberate, accompanied by prayers chanted in ancient Greek. Your lips are dry, but you force yourself to whisper the responses, to accept the final rites. Every word feels heavy, as if you are being unspooled from the world, each syllable another thread cut. Your family is summoned to your bedside. They kneel as the priests chant, crossing themselves, some weeping openly. You see your wife's face, red-eyed and exhausted, her hands clenched in prayer. Your children, uncertain, try to imitate her devotion. You are aware, in a distant way, that this is not just for you, but for them, a ritual to reassure the living as much as to prepare the dying. The priests bless them too, reminding all present that even emperors are mortal, and that death is the great equalizer in the eyes of God. The palace chapel is opened to the public, and lines of supplicants file through, lighting candles for your soul. Monks in the cloistered courts recite psalms around the clock, their voices weaving an unbroken tapestry of prayer. Bells toll at regular intervals, echoing through the marble halls, each peal a reminder that the end is near. You can almost imagine the sound traveling across the city, over the Bosphorus, out into the provinces, announcing your decline to the world. The confessor arrives, old and bent, but sharp-eyed. He sits by your bed and listens to your final admissions. Sins remembered and forgotten, regrets that have grown heavier with each passing year. You confess as honestly as you can, sometimes haltingly, sometimes rambling, sometimes weeping. You ask forgiveness for things large and small, a harsh word to a child, an unjust sentence passed in anger, the wars that stained your reign with blood. The confessor absolves you, his words both soothing and remote, as if spoken from the threshold of another world. At the height of these ceremonies, you are offered the Eucharist for the last time. The bread is placed on your tongue, the wine pressed to your lips. You struggle to swallow, tasting not salvation, but the memory of all the countless communions that came before, each one a little closer to this moment. The priests chant once more, and you feel the prayers gather around you, a shield against the unknown darkness ahead. The palace, always noisy, falls silent during these rites. Even the servants seem to tiptoe, aware that something sacred, if only the passing of a soul, is taking place behind the heavy doors. Courtiers, usually so eager for news and advantage, now keep their distance, whispering in corners, waiting for the rituals to end, waiting for the final breath. In these hours, time stretches and bends. You are aware, acutely, of your own smallness before the mystery of death. Even the mighty emperor is no more than a supplicant, one soul among many, hoping for mercy, forgiveness, and some measure of peace. The grand machinery of the church can offer only comfort, not deliverance. The candles will burn down, the incense will fade, the prayers will be finished, but you will be gone. This is the last public act of your reign, not a victory, not a speech, but a ceremony in which you play the humblest part. You, who have been the axis of the world for so long, now become just another mortal in the hands of God. For the first time, you are not leading the ritual, you are its object. And as the last prayer is whispered, you realize the one thing no ceremony can change. The journey must be taken alone. The line between sleep and waking, between memory and the present, begins to blur. You, Michael, who once ruled a world of sharp edges and bright banners, now inhabit a dim and shifting fog. You are conscious, and then you are not. Time becomes elastic, looping in on itself, stretching until it breaks. The prayers of the priests fade into a distant hum. The faces of your loved ones drift in and out of focus, and your own thoughts scatter like leaves in a storm. At first, these absences are brief. You wake from a blankness to find your wife squeezing your hand, her voice calling you back to the world with quiet, desperate repetition. Sometimes it works. You force your eyelids open, smile weakly, and say a few slurred words that seem to reassure her. You listen as your children murmur anxious greetings, their voices blending with the shuffling feet of servants and the low drone of prayers. As quickly as you surfaced, you slip under again, disappearing into a place beyond words. Within each passing hour, these lapses grow longer. When you are awake, the world is muffled, wrapped in cotton. Light comes and goes, filtered through the drawn curtains. Sounds arrive as if from a great distance. The priest's chanting continues, but now it is less a comfort than a dull ache, an endless litany that tugs at your senses, reminding you of the passage of time, of the ticking clock you can no longer see. You dream, but the dreams are strange, vivid, yes, but also shifting, slippery, as if someone else is telling your story. You see yourself as a boy, chasing pigeons in the square. Then suddenly you are the emperor again, standing atop the city walls, waving to a faceless crowd. A moment later, you are neither, you are simply floating, weightless, unmoored from the pain and expectation of the world. There are brief flashes of awareness, moments of almost lucidity, when you catch fragments of conversation, a physician's worried whisper, your wife's fervent prayers, the muffled sobs of a child who thinks you cannot hear. Sometimes, in these moments, you try to speak, to comfort them, to remind them that you are still here. But your tongue is thick and slow, your thoughts heavy. The words you manage are few, and rarely the ones you mean. The rituals do not stop. The priests continue their vigil. The candles burn lower, and the air grows thick with incense and anticipation. Your body, now just a pale shadow beneath the linen, seems almost abandoned, an empty house waiting for its last guest to leave. You feel neither hunger nor thirst. These needs have left you, as if already preparing for the world to move on without you. Sometimes you sense the presence of people, family, servants, anxious courtiers, hovering at the edge of your bed, their voices a gentle storm. You hear them argue, sometimes weep, sometimes laugh at memories they share to keep the darkness at bay. But these moments slip away, their details lost as your mind retreats further. At last, you find yourself suspended between two worlds. You can feel the weight of a hand in yours, but you cannot lift your own to return the gesture. You hear your name called, but it echoes, unanswered, in the hollow of your mind. You begin to lose all sense of self, no longer emperor, no longer father, no longer even Michael, just a flicker of consciousness flickering at the edge of oblivion. Those around you grow quieter, sensing that you have almost crossed the invisible threshold. They lean in, straining for any sign. A twitch of the fingers, a flutter of the eyelids, the faintest movement of your lips. Sometimes you oblige, sometimes you do not. The world continues its vigil, but you are barely aware of it now, drifting deeper and deeper into a sleep from which you know you will not return. In this strange half-life, time loses all meaning. The rituals become background noise. The agony and fear fade. You feel nothing but a gentle release, a slow surrender, a fading pulse, the last warm current as you drift away from the shores of the living. No more decisions to make, no more burdens to carry, no more weight of empire pressing on your chest. There is only this, the dimming of the light, the silence that follows, the end of consciousness as a quiet prelude to whatever comes next. You are gone, though your body lingers a little while longer, surrounded by those who loved you, those who served you, and those who simply waited for your end. The final curtain is falling, and though you can no longer witness it, the world pauses to mark your passing. There is a special silence that settles over a room in the hours before death. In your final hours, Michael, you become the center of this hush, a living paradox, present, yet slipping away, king of a realm where even breath is borrowed and time is counted, not in days, but in heartbeats. The world outside, with its clamor and intrigue, fades into irrelevance. Inside, the air is thick with anticipation, hope, resignation, and the stale scent of incense that refuses to clear. Your bedchamber is a world unto itself. The curtains are drawn against the city, and only candlelight flickers on the gilded ceiling, casting your drawn features into strange relief. Faces move in and out of the circle of light. Your wife, pale and silent. Your children, clutching each other, uncertain and tear-stained. The loyal old servants, standing in the corners like wraiths, waiting for their duty to be over. The priests hover, murmuring prayers, with the practiced patience of men who have seen this scene many times before. Only the physicians seem restless, as if still hunting for a miracle in the ticking of your pulse. You no longer feel the pain, or if you do, it is only distantly, as if your body is already something you have left behind. Time, always so relentless, now trickles by in odd, irregular spurts. Sometimes you are aware of voices, soft, anxious, attempting to comfort you or perhaps themselves. Sometimes there is nothing at all, only the soft roar of blood in your ears, each beat slower and more uncertain than the last. The priests perform their last rites, voices rising and falling, Latin and Greek prayers intertwining in a melody meant to carry your soul safely onward. Holy oil is anointed on your brow and hands, the Eucharist once more offered, though your lips barely move. The rituals now are more for the living than the dying. Reassurance for those who will remain, a final hope that nothing essential has been forgotten or left undone. For those gathered, the passing of an emperor is both intimate and public, a personal sorrow and a state occasion, equal parts grief and ceremony. Courtiers gather just beyond the door, awaiting the inevitable news, already rehearsing their faces of solemnity for the moment the city will demand it. Outside, rumors swirl, torches flicker in the square, and the city holds its breath. But here, in this quiet, only the sound of your labored breathing marks the time. Sometimes you drift into a moment of lucidity, eyes opening to the faces gathered at your bedside. You see your wife, her hand cool on your brow, her lips moving in silent prayer. Perhaps you recognize your eldest son, standing stiff and uncertain, already wearing the expression of a man who knows that power is a lonely inheritance. You see the shadows of old friends and enemies, the ghosts of your past assembled for a final audience. You try to speak, but the words will not come. Perhaps they are not needed. The priests grow quieter, the prayers slowing to a near whisper. Someone brings you water, touching the cup to your lips. You swallow reflexively, barely tasting it. Your breath becomes shallow, then pauses, then resumes. Each gap grows a little longer, each return a little fainter. You are a swimmer at the end of a long, cold journey, each breath another stroke against the undertow. Those watching mark the signs, the hands that grow colder, the pulse that falters, the flicker of awareness that dims and then is gone. Your body, once the seat of an empire, is now simply a frail barrier between this world and whatever comes next. You feel the world slipping from your grasp, not with a bang, but with a sigh. There are tears, muffled sobs, hands clasped in silent prayer. No one dares move or speak too loudly, as if any noise might call you back or drive you away for good. Someone, perhaps the most practical servant, quietly checks for your breath, your pulse, a final sign. The city waits, the empire waits, but here, in this quiet room, it is only a family watching the last light fade from your eyes. You are gone before anyone dares to say it aloud. The priests cross themselves, the servants bow their heads, your wife weeps without restraint. The ritual is finished, the long vigil is over. The emperor has departed, and with him an era ends, not with trumpets or banners, but in the dim, candle-lit hush of a single, private room. Even in your final hours, history is not grand or glorious. It is silent, awkward, and unbearably human. A last breath, a gentle hand, a whispered goodbye. It is strange, in the end, how ordinary the moment itself is. After weeks, months of drama, of agony and ritual and whispered dread, death arrives in your chamber with the simplicity of a breath that simply does not return. There is no thunderclap, no celestial vision, no final revelation worthy of the chroniclers. Instead, it is quiet, so quiet that those watching might almost miss it. The candles flicker. The city's bells, already on standby, have not yet begun to toll. You, Michael, have been many things: conqueror, restorer, father, enemy, legend, disappointment. In the last instant, you are none of these. You are only a man at the very end of the most common journey of all. Your wife holds your hand. Your children, those who could bear to remain, stand behind her. The priests make the sign of the cross, eyes downcast. A doctor places a hand to your wrist, waiting for a pulse that is not there. Someone whispers the word, gone, as if it is a secret. Someone else repeats it, a little louder, and then the room moves, slowly at first, as reality trickles in. There is a strange sense of release in the air. Grief, certainly, but also relief. For you, the suffering is finished. For those around you, the dreadful waiting is over. The priests slip easily into the ancient language of death, reciting the prayers for the departing soul. Your body is washed, anointed, and covered with clean linen. Candles are moved closer, their flames reflected in the tears of your family. Someone opens the window just a crack, letting in the night air, perhaps for the soul to escape, perhaps just because the room suddenly seems stifling. Outside your chamber, the machinery of state begins to creak into motion. Messengers are dispatched through secret doors and back corridors, tasked with spreading the news before rumors can twist it beyond recognition. Courtiers who have been waiting in shadows suddenly snap into action, donning mourning robes, preparing solemn faces, rehearsing the speeches and gestures appropriate to the passing of a sovereign. Within the palace, every reaction is amplified by centuries of tradition and fear. Your death is not just a family loss, it is an event, an emergency, a catalyst. The guards change their stance at the doors. The servants move in hurried, anxious silence. Someone begins to drape black cloth over the icons and tapestries. The chief physician, whose hope has run dry, leaves the room quietly, pausing only to cross himself at the threshold. The chief confessor lingers, eyes closed, lips still moving in prayer, as if reluctant to let you go entirely. Your body, meanwhile, is tended with the care due to an emperor. The rites of washing and anointing are performed by hands that tremble with reverence and fatigue. Your jaw is bound, your eyes closed, your limbs straightened and arranged. You are dressed in your finest linens, the imperial regalia laid beside you, the symbols of office set out for the world to see, even though you have no need of them anymore. In the city, the first rumors spark like flint on dry straw. The emperor is dead, they say, and the phrase is repeated in a dozen languages in the markets and the monasteries, the ports and the palaces. Bells begin to toll, slowly at first, then in a spreading, mournful chorus. The sound travels across Constantinople, rolling over roofs and down alleys, echoing off the water and into the deepest reaches of the night. For a few moments, the city is united in a single thought, a single breath held and released. You do not hear any of this. For you, the drama has ended. The pain, the intrigue, the prayers and doubts, all of it dissolves into the same silence that greeted your first breath. If there is a reckoning, it comes beyond the reach of the priests, beyond the echo of the bells, beyond even the memories of those who loved you and those who could not wait for your passing. The palace is already shifting around you. Servants prepare the chamber for mourners, and soon the first procession will begin. Courtiers, generals, ambassadors all come to pay their respects, to see the body, to begin the long dance of succession. For your family, grief is real and sharp. For others, it is a mask, or a moment's inconvenience, or a chance. Your death, so long anticipated, is over in an instant, and already it is being folded into the larger tapestry of the empire's story. There will be speeches, declarations, new coins minted, new alliances struck. The city will return to its routines. Your enemies and allies alike will measure what you left behind and decide, each for themselves, what it means. But for now, In this candlelit chamber, there is only the stillness of death, the end that comes for emperors and beggars alike, the most ordinary and inescapable fact of all. You may be gone, but your death is just the opening act for a new round of drama, both sacred and profane. Death does not bring peace, not in Byzantium, not for emperors, and certainly not for those left behind. As your body cools beneath its shroud, and your soul, if such a thing exists, moves on to its own unknowable fate, the palace erupts into frantic, ritualized action. First, there is the body itself, now transformed from sovereign to relic. You are washed, oiled, and dressed with the care owed to an emperor. Your hands are crossed on your chest, a cross or icon placed between them for all to see. Your finest robes are brought out, ones you rarely wore in life, now arranged perfectly in death. A diadem is set by your pillow, an uneasy reminder that crowns always outlive the heads that wore them. The priests are busy. Your death has triggered an avalanche of liturgy, requiems, litanies, processions, and endless chanting. The palace chapel, thick with incense and shadow, becomes a theater of mourning. Choirs sing solemn hymns, their voices echoing against marble and gold. Monks and clergy file past your bier in steady lines, bowing, crossing themselves, offering prayers for your soul. Relics are paraded and candles are lit until the room flickers with 1,000 trembling flames. Your family, meanwhile, moves through a haze of grief and protocol. Your wife weeps, comforted by ladies in waiting and anxious bishops. Your sons and daughters are pulled into the orbit of senior courtiers, each already jostling for influence in the coming days. There are tearful embraces, but also quiet, urgent conversations behind closed doors. The business of succession waits for no one, not even for the dead. In the outer halls, news of your passing travels fast. Courtiers, many of whom spent your final hours rehearsing their expressions of grief, now parade their sorrow with practiced skill. Some openly weep, others bow low, faces hidden, minds already turning to the shifting political tides. The more pragmatic rush to secure their own positions. Alliances must be reaffirmed, enemies placated, favors called in. Even as your body lies in state, the machinery of empire grinds on, louder and more impatient with every hour. Beyond the palace, the city takes on the rituals of public mourning. Bells toll, churches fill, and processions wind through the streets. Markets are quieter than usual, but the gossip is louder, each retelling of your final days more dramatic than the last. There are those who claim to have foreseen your death in a dream, those who swear a miraculous sign appeared above the palace at the very moment your soul departed. Merchants display black banners. Beggars gather at the gates, hoping for coins tossed in memory of the departed emperor. As your body is displayed, guarded night and day, the people of Constantinople file past. Some cross themselves and whisper prayers. Others stare, wide-eyed, at the pageantry and wealth on display. A few, emboldened by the anonymity of the crowd, speculate aloud about what comes next. Will your son keep the peace? Will the empire survive another transition? Will the city fall to the next invader or thrive under new rule? The future, always uncertain, now feels positively vertiginous. Within the palace, the rituals intensify. A funeral procession is prepared, banners unfurled, incense bearers assembled, relics arranged. The court's highest dignitaries walk in solemn ranks, each step measured, each gesture symbolic. Your body is carried through the city streets, accompanied by a procession of clergy, nobles, and the curious masses. The sound of chanting mingles with the tolling of bells, the tramp of feet, and the low murmur of a city holding its breath. As your coffin is lowered into the tomb, final prayers are said. The grave is sealed with as much ceremony as Byzantium can muster, which is to say, quite a lot. Coins and relics are placed alongside you, tokens for a journey no one living understands. Your tomb will be visited for generations, more for its marble and inscriptions than for any memory of the man inside. You have joined the long line of emperors whose deaths marked both an ending and an opportunity. Back in the palace, life resumes, but it is not the same. New faces appear where old ones have vanished. Your former allies whisper about loyalty and legacy. Your enemies, if they are wise, keep their triumph muted for a time. In council chambers, new plans are hatched, new decrees drafted. The world did not stop for your death, nor for your funeral. It never does. Stories about your final days are already circulating. Some say you died bravely, surrounded by loyal friends and family. Others insist it was a death marked by pain and confusion, a warning from God. A few, less charitable, mutter about curses and poisoned potions, about sins never confessed, about enemies left unpunished. What really happened in those last hours? Already, the truth is slipping away, replaced by legend, rumor, and convenient memory. And so, after death, you become a story, told, retold, revised, and ultimately half forgotten. The empire moves on because it must. You are history now, a name, a tomb, and a cautionary tale for the next in line. You would like to think that death is the final curtain, that after so many weeks of agony and ceremony, you might finally be allowed to rest. But memory, much like the empire you once ruled, is an unruly and unpredictable thing. It clings, shifts, and fades in its own time, not in yours. Your story, Michael, does not end with your burial. Instead, it is rewritten again and again, each telling sanding off the rough edges, adding new ones, until the real you is as elusive as a ghost in the palace corridors. In the weeks after your funeral, your name is everywhere, carved into prayers, scrawled across reports, whispered in council meetings, where anxious men debate how to invoke your legacy and avoid your mistakes. The church commemorates your soul with long-winded sermons, where you are praised for piety, strength, and humility, even as the congregation tries to recall exactly what it was you did. Courtiers toast to your unforgettable reign at somber banquets, eyes already on the next sovereign. Loyalists lay wreaths at your tomb, and the more opportunistic leave petitions, hoping that even a dead emperor can help their cause. Outside the palace, in the markets and back alleys, your story is retold with all the color and exaggeration that rumor allows. Some say you were a tyrant, others a hero, others merely unlucky to rule at a time when luck was in short supply. The ordinary people remember you mostly as a source of taxes, an occasional spectacle. Some recall a moment when your armies returned in triumph, banners fluttering in the wind. Others remember little more than the price of bread, the gossip about your health, or the day the bells tolled for your passing. The chroniclers, those tireless writers of the empire's endlessly repetitive story, begin their work in earnest. They quarrel over your achievements, your failures, your motives, searching for lessons, or at least for drama. They polish your words, insert speeches you never made, and quietly erase the more embarrassing blunders. Over time, your reign is compressed into paragraphs, then footnotes, and finally a few lines in a dusty codex, just another emperor among so many. Within your own family, the memory of your last days hangs over the palace like incense, heavy and sweet, but quick to dissipate. Your children must grow into their new roles, trying to honor your legacy or, in some cases, escape its shadow. Your wife, left to navigate the treacherous waters of courtly politics alone, finds your absence both a relief and a wound. For a while, every corner of the palace echoes with reminders of your presence, but soon new footsteps, new voices, and new intrigues take over. As the years pass, memory becomes malleable. Some generations will praise you for saving the empire, for returning Constantinople to Byzantine hands. Others will blame you for its decline, or for the debts and enemies you left behind. Most, if they remember you at all, will do so not as a man, but as a symbol, a face on a coin, a name on a monument, a story told to frighten or inspire. Your tomb, grand and solemn, will outlast the empire itself. For centuries, pilgrims and scholars will pass by, tracing the letters of your name and wondering who you really were. Occasionally, a historian will dig through the archives and attempt to reconstruct your life from half remembered accounts and contradictory reports. The result will be less history than speculation, more a reflection of their own times and worries than of yours. Eventually, all the details blur. The agony of your last illness, the panic and rituals, the tears of your family, these become anecdotes, then shadows, then silence. Your enemies fade, your friends disappear, and your story is smoothed into a lesson or a warning, depending on who needs it. Even the chroniclers grow bored. The empire finds new crises, new heroes, new deaths. Still, for a few, you remain more than a footnote. A priest lights a candle for your soul, not out of duty, but from some lingering sense of kinship. A child hears your name in a bedtime story and asks, was he good or bad? No one really knows. That is the secret of memory and of history. Emperors, too, are only human, and their greatest hope is to be remembered at all. And so, Michael, you fade not in fire or thunder, but gently into the mists of memory, another face in the long, tedious procession of history. Your death was ordinary, your suffering universal, your legacy uncertain. In the end, that is the truest story of all, not the grandeur of empires, but the smallness of human life and the long, slow war of forgetting. Sleep well, forgotten emperor. History has already moved on.